Welcome to True Crime Threads, where we unravel the darkest secrets behind real-life crimes. In today's case, a picture-perfect honeymoon turns into a chilling tale of obsession, betrayal, and murder. Ethan Crawford, a 35-year-old self-made tech CEO, had it all: wealth, power, and a reputation as a visionary entrepreneur. He was the face of success, gracing magazine covers and attending elite events. His life was meticulously crafted, each achievement adding to the image of a man who always got what he wanted. From an early age, he had an obsessive drive for perfection, ensuring that everything he surrounded himself with met his exacting standards. His whirlwind romance with 24-year-old Sophia Mitchell seemed like the next logical step in his curated life. She was stunning, intelligent, and ambitious in her own right. Working as a marketing executive, she had a natural charm that drew people in. Unlike Ethan, whose success was built on strategy and control, Sophia had an effortless grace that made her instantly likable. The two met at a business gala, where she had been invited as a guest speaker. Ethan, known for being selective in his personal relationships, was instantly captivated by her. Their love story unfolded quickly, moving at a pace that left even their closest friends surprised. Within months of dating, Ethan proposed in front of the Eiffel Tower, a moment carefully documented and shared across social media. It was a grand, picture-perfect engagement, the kind that only existed in fairy tales or luxury brand commercials. Sophia's face lit up in every photo, her excitement palpable. The world saw a couple deeply in love, perfectly matched in ambition and elegance. The wedding was an extravagant affair, hosted at a private vineyard, attended by celebrities, industry giants, and high-profile figures. Every detail was flawless, from the custom-designed floral arrangements to the 7-course meal curated by a Michelin-starred chef. The media covered the event extensively, further cementing their status as a power couple. Sophia, dressed in an intricate lace gown, radiated happiness. Ethan, always polished, stood beside her with an air of quiet pride. Together, they looked unstoppable. For their honeymoon, Ethan spared no expense. They traveled to a 5-star resort on a secluded island in the Maldives, where they had their own private villa. The setting was paradise: crystal-clear waters, golden sunsets, and a level of exclusivity reserved for the world's elite. Their villa featured floor-to-ceiling glass windows that overlooked the ocean, an infinity pool that blended seamlessly with the horizon, and a personal butler catering to their every need. It was designed for romance, a retreat meant to celebrate the start of their new life together. The first few days were filled with luxury. They indulged in spa treatments, candlelit dinners, and private yacht excursions. Sophia posted pictures of their adventures, her sun-kissed face glowing with happiness, Ethan smiling beside her. Every image told a story of a couple basking in love, untouched by anything but joy. But beneath the glitz and glamour, a sinister truth was waiting to unfold. Ethan had meticulously planned every aspect of their life together. Yet there was one thing he had never anticipated, a secret that Sophia had kept from him. And once he uncovered it, their paradise would turn into a nightmare. The first few days of the honeymoon seemed perfect. The couple indulged in spa treatments, fine dining, and romantic boat rides. They posted pictures on social media, smiling, carefree, in love. Their days were filled with leisure, exploring the island's crystal-clear waters and lounging in their luxurious villa. Every meal was an experience, with private chefs preparing gourmet dishes as they dined under the stars. The staff at the resort admired them, whispering among themselves about how they seemed to embody the ideal newlywed couple. But something changed on their third night. Ethan, who had been relaxed and affectionate since their arrival, suddenly seemed different. The resort staff later reported noticing a shift in his demeanor. At dinner, he barely touched his food, his jaw clenched as he stared off into the distance. Sophia, usually lively and engaged, appeared subdued, forcing a smile whenever their waiter approached. Those observing them assumed it was nothing more than the exhaustion of travel catching up with them. But something darker had begun to take hold. That night, the hotel security cameras captured Sophia walking alone along the shore. She had wrapped her arms around herself, her head down, as if deep in thought. The wind swept through her hair, and she moved at a slow, deliberate pace. Resort staff members later recalled seeing her from a distance, but thinking nothing of it at the time. She had always seemed independent, often wandering off to take in the beauty of the island on her own. The next morning, everything changed. Sophia was nowhere to be found. Ethan, frantic, called the front desk, his voice thick with panic. He claimed that she had woken up early to go for a swim and never returned. His worry seemed genuine, and within minutes, resort employees were searching the shoreline, hoping she had simply wandered off again. But as the hours passed, with no sign of her, fear began to set in. By noon, local authorities had joined the search. Drones scanned the coastline while rescue boats combed the waters. Ethan stood by, his face pale, his hands shaking. He kept repeating that this wasn't like her, that something must have happened. And then, just before sunset, the worst possible discovery was made. Sophia's lifeless body was found floating near the rocks at the edge of the island. She was dressed in the same clothes she had worn the night before, her skin eerily pale. Her head had a deep wound, suggesting she had hit something before entering the water. Ethan collapsed at the sight of her, his grief raw and unfiltered. His cries echoed across the beach as officers tried to pull him away. The image of the once happy groom, now shattered and broken, was one that no one would forget. At first, it seemed like a terrible accident. The rocky terrain was dangerous, especially in the dark. But as investigators examined the scene, something about Ethan's version of events didn't quite add up. As the investigation deepened, shocking details about Ethan and Sophia's relationship came to light. What had seemed like a whirlwind romance filled with love and devotion began to unravel, revealing cracks that had been hidden beneath the surface. Friends and family who had once admired their seemingly perfect relationship now spoke of troubling signs that had gone unnoticed. Sophia's closest friends revealed that, in the weeks leading up to the wedding, she had confided in them about her growing fears. She had loved Ethan, but there were moments when his obsession with control unsettled her. He had always been particular, expecting perfection in every aspect of his life. When it came to their relationship, he had certain expectations that she had never imagined would become dangerous. Ethan had been fixated on purity. He often spoke about how much it meant to him to marry a woman who had never been with anyone else, someone untouched by past relationships. At first, Sophia had brushed it off as an old-fashioned belief, something he had grown up valuing. But as their wedding day approached, his comments became more frequent, his questions more persistent. He wanted reassurance, certainty. He needed to believe that she had only ever belonged to him. But Sophia had a past one that she had never thought would matter. She had been in relationships before Ethan, experiences she had chosen not to share in detail. She had never lied to him, but she had also never felt the need to confess something so personal. Yet, somehow, Ethan had found out. 2 nights before her death, Sophia made a call to her best friend. Her voice was hushed, urgent. She whispered that Ethan had discovered everything. He had gone through her old messages, reading conversations she had assumed were long forgotten. She had tried to explain, to tell him that it didn't change anything between them, that their love was real. But he hadn't listened. He had stared at her with cold, calculating eyes, His jaw clenched so tightly that she could see the muscles twitch beneath his skin. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't lashed out. Instead, he had fallen into silence, retreating into himself in a way that sent a chill down her spine. She had told her friend that she felt uneasy, that something about him seemed different. And then, as if realizing she had said too much, she quickly ended the call. Investigators soon discovered something even more disturbing. Ethan had searched for specific information in the days leading up to their honeymoon. He had looked up head trauma in drowning victims and how long before a body surfaces. He had read articles about accidental falls near rocky shorelines and the difficulty of determining foul play and water-related deaths. The more they uncovered, the more it became clear that Sophia's death was not an accident. It was the result of something far more sinister, something that had been building long before they set foot on the island. The autopsy confirmed what detectives suspected: Sophia's death wasn't an accident. The initial assumption had been that she slipped, hit her head on the rocks, and drowned, but the forensic report told a different story. Her lungs had no significant water intake, meaning she had been unconscious or dead before she entered the water. The most telling detail was the blunt force trauma to the back of her head. The injury was deep, the kind inflicted not by a simple fall but by something more deliberate. It was now clear that she had been struck, not just the victim of a tragic misstep. With this revelation, investigators turned their full attention to Ethan. His emotional display, his apparent distress, none of it could erase the evidence stacking up against him. When questioned, he insisted he had no idea what had happened. He maintained that he had woken up alone, that Sophia had likely gone for a walk or a swim as she often did, and that he had been as shocked as anyone to learn of her fate. But his version of events had too many inconsistencies. Authorities re-examined the security footage from that night. While the cameras didn't capture the moment of the crime, they did show Ethan leaving their villa minutes after Sophia had walked along the shore. He had claimed he had been asleep the entire time, but the footage placed him outside, heading in the same direction she had gone. His timeline was beginning to crumble. Witnesses came forward, including a resort staff member who had overheard Ethan muttering under his breath earlier that evening. His words had been chilling. "She lied to me." It was spoken in a low, controlled voice, not in anger, but in a quiet, simmering fury. The staff member hadn't thought much of it at the time, assuming it was nothing more than a marital spat. Now, in light of the evidence, it carried a much darker meaning. The motive was becoming painfully clear. Ethan had built his entire life on control, on perfection, on ensuring that every aspect of his world was exactly as he wanted it. Sophia's past had shattered that illusion. To him, her history wasn't just a betrayal. It was an unforgivable stain on the image he had created for himself. He couldn't accept that she had belonged to someone else before him. With the evidence mounting, authorities moved swiftly. After days of questioning, Ethan was arrested in his hotel suite, the same luxurious villa where they had once celebrated the beginning of their life together. He didn't fight or resist. He simply stood there, his expression unreadable, as officers led him away. The media exploded with the story. The fairy tale wedding, the lavish honeymoon, the beautiful young bride, all of it had ended in tragedy. The world now saw Ethan not as a brilliant CEO or a devoted husband, but as a man whose obsession with control had driven him to murder. His empire, once untouchable, was beginning to collapse. Ethan's high-profile trial captivated the nation. The case had everything a wealthy CEO, a picture-perfect marriage, and a shocking crime committed in paradise. The media followed every development, dissecting every detail of his life. Analysts debated whether he was a cold-blooded killer or a man wrongfully accused. His defense team, funded by his immense wealth, fought aggressively to dismantle the case against him. The prosecution laid out their argument with precision. They presented the autopsy findings, proving Sophia had not drowned but had been struck on the back of the head. They revealed Ethan's suspicious internet searches about head trauma and bodies in water, showing premeditation. They played the security footage, which contradicted his alibi. He had claimed to be asleep when Sophia disappeared, yet there he was, walking toward the shoreline just minutes after she had. Each piece of evidence chipped away at the image of the grieving husband he had tried to portray. His defense team, however, pushed back. They argued that there was no direct proof Ethan had attacked Sophia. They suggested she might have fallen on her own or that someone else could have been involved. They painted Sophia as secretive, implying that if she had hidden things from Ethan, she might have had other secrets as well. They questioned the reliability of witness testimonies, claiming that the resort staff could have misinterpreted what they heard. But the prosecution had one final piece of evidence. A resort security camera, though positioned at a distance, had captured a crucial moment. The grainy footage showed a figure matching Ethan's build following Sophia toward the rocky shoreline. The video didn't show the attack itself, but it placed him at the scene just moments before she suffered her fatal injury. Combined with his internet searches, the autopsy results, and his inconsistent statements, it was enough to convince the jury. After weeks of arguments, expert testimonies, and media frenzy, the jury reached their decision. The verdict was read in a silent courtroom, guilty of second-degree murder. Ethan showed no reaction as the words were spoken, his face blank, his body rigid. His sentence was swift, 25 years in prison. The once powerful CEO who had controlled every aspect of his life now had no control at all. Sophia's family found some solace in the verdict, but the pain of her loss remained unbearable. She had been full of life, on the brink of a promising future, only to have it stolen by the man who was supposed to love and protect her. The world mourned the senseless tragedy, a stark reminder of how obsession and control could turn love into something deadly. Ethan had spent his life building an empire, crafting an image of perfection. But in the end, it was his darkest secret that unraveled everything. His story became a cautionary tale, a chilling example of how a single obsession could destroy everything, and the world would never forget the chilling words that started it all. She wasn't a virgin.